day one of my life, but sir genuinely does not need any introduction. He's done his MD in psychiatry from PGI Chandigarh, and he's been the professor and founder head Department of Psychiatry, NKP Salvi Institute of Medical Sciences, Nagpur. He has 39 years teaching experience, a postgraduate guide and examiner for MD exams since last almost 4 decades. He's immediate past president, IPS West Zone. He's received the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award by the Bombay Psychiatric Society 2022. Also, several other prestigious awards, including Outstanding Contribution to Healthcare Award by Governor of Maharashtra in 2026, Nagpur Bhushan Award 2003, LP Shah Oration Award in 2020. He's published 33 papers in index journals and authored several book chapters. He also has the distinguished honor of editing first book in the world on cyber psychiatry for Indian Psychiatric Society. And he's also an acclaimed light music vocalist and film music historian. And he's also cut an album of his songs in 2010. So we welcome you, sir.
Thank you. So, shall I go ahead, Mr. Raji?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Niyaz already introduced.
Yeah,
So I don't
sure.
add on much to it. And the topic is well known to everybody.
Yeah.
Like school refusal is one of the important aspect in child psychiatry, where the basic concept of actually the bullying is one of the important concept where the is affect the school refusal in children's in the age group of actually maybe in the 6 to 11 or 12 years. And with this short introduction topic, I'll not waste much time because we are already overlapping with the IPS program, IPS national program. So I'll request Bhavesh sir to start his talk and we can finish it in time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Right. So, friends, as has already been introduced, our topic is academic decline in children, a clinician's approach. Now, this is a problem that all of us see fairly commonly. In our day-to-day practice, parents often come with children reporting, either different academics related difficulties of children, or that the child has not been doing well academically lately for 1, 2, 3, 4 years or whatever. And now we have been seeing this problem fairly commonly. What I want to emphasize today is the comprehensive manner in which the evaluation of such a child needs to be done. The problem is really multifactorial. There are too many factors affecting the child's academics, and now in roughly 30 minutes we can just have a bird's eye view of the entire topic. Right, so here I go. Yeah, I start with a true story of this 12-year-old boy who was admitted to a public school in New Delhi, and because his father was in a transferable job. So earlier they were in Calcutta, where he was in another private school, and then went to Delhi and admitted to one of the very elite schools in Delhi. I don't have to name the school, but it was a very kind of elite and elitist school. Now this boy was a topper in his Calcutta school till the 7th standard, but when he joined this school in 8th standard, he found too many difficulties. And some of the difficulties that he encountered, I have quoted them verbatim, that students were always conversing amongst themselves in English. Now this for the boy was quite intimidating because he was not really conversant with English at that point in time. And he said all the students were from very rich and elite families, and his father being government servant, he found himself not really on par with the kind of clothes they wore, the kind of things that they possessed, and so on. And compounding the problem was his temperament of being rather shy and diffident. And now all these things, now in spite of his fairly good academic background in the earlier school in a different city, he found it quite difficult to adjust here, and he started declining academically. And he says that at least in 2 unit tests he scored much less, nowhere near the top, but not even in the middle of the class. And to make things more complicated, the teacher used to at times ridicule him and make him stand up in the class and ask him, "Ki, did you really top in your earlier class?" And then the whole class would laugh. So you can imagine the plight of this boy. I mean, academically fairly good earlier, but now because of these kind of emotional reasons, he started going down. Now he says that he was called by the principal of the school, who was told that, see, there is this boy who claims that he was a topper. I mean, his report card says that, but now he's not doing well academically. So the principal asked him as to what the difficulty was, and now even that didn't help. The boy was too shy to report anything, to really open his heart out, and couldn't tell the principal as to what were the problems that he was facing. Then he started missing his school, something that he had never done earlier. I mean, he would stand for the school bus, and when he saw the school bus coming, he would hide behind a tree. And this happened multiple times. And he used to go home and tell कि नहीं आज बस मिस हो गई, आज या बस आई नहीं, and so on. Now his parents were quite wise. They sensed the predicament. They thought that something was fishy, and all was not really adding up, and they decided to change the school. And then they shifted the boy to a CBSE school in Nagpur, where he had at least two local guardians, his uncle and his aunt. So they decided for Nagpur. And when he came to the school here, it was a school run by the central government. And now here again he started doing very well academically. He again was almost at the top of his class, again achieving the kind of marks he had been getting earlier. So, I mean, this is a story that gives us an idea about what emotional difficulties and the change of school can really do to a student. Something which is a part of my today's topic. And friends, this boy was no one else, but that was me. I mean, this story pertains to my own life. And very early in my life, I mean, when I was in 8th or 9th standard, I realized that what does a change of school mean to a child? I mean, what does going to a school where the socio-cultural background of other students does not match the child's own, where the common language spoken by the children is something in which the child is not fluent. And I think this has helped me significantly empathize more with students who are not doing well academically. Now, coming to the topic proper, it's important to understand that academic decline is a final common pathway of multiple problems. So it's a symptom, and it's not a diagnosis. It's not a disease. And the causation is multiple. I mean, so many different kinds of causes about which I'll be discussing in some detail later on. They can contribute to this. And it is certainly not only due to laziness or lack of effort. Now, there's a kind of thought that most parents and teachers have about students who are not doing well academically, that he's not hardworking, he doesn't study hard. I mean, all of us have seen these kind of things, which are far from true. Now, in a clinic, now whatever I'm going to say pertains to an average psychiatric clinic when a child with academic difficulties walks in, is brought by the parents. So we need to understand several things about the academic decline. Is it sudden or it has been gradual? And now academic decline means decline in the academic sphere and does not pertain only to grades. I mean, the parents' complaints could be any of these things. I mean, they might complain about the child not concentrating well enough in his studies, the child not able to remember what he has studied, the child's attendance in school, the child has started playing truant, the child has started showing school refusal, something to which Mishra sir alluded to, missing the school assignments, going down in the performance, and so on. So it can be any of these things or a combination of these. So we need to be clear as to which area exactly is being affected. And we should make an effort to find as to what was the point of onset. I mean, was it some illness that the child suffered from? Was it some illness in the family? For example, father suffers a stroke and the entire family's life revolves around the father. Even the child has got to help the family in taking care of the father, and the academics take a back seat. Or it could be any major life event. It could be developmental transitions. Like, for example, a boy who is much worried about nocturnal emissions, has misconceptions about masturbation, starts worrying excessively about that. A girl who has achieved menarche, a girl whose say breast development is much more than what she would desire, and she feels that she's a kind of butt of jokes in the class, and so on. So we need to know about these details. Now, reasons for academic decline, as I've said earlier, now they lie in generally in any of these four areas. The reason can lie with the child, it can be something in the home, it can be about the teaching in the school, or it can be about the education system in general and the pattern of examination. Now, let's go into some details. When we see such a child, it's very important, first of all, to rule out neurodevelopmental disorders. After we have taken a detailed history, we need to look out for these. I mean, we know that all of these can interfere with academics. So ADHD, of course, because of lack of concentration, the child not being able to sit still in attention, the attendant memory difficulties in children with ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual issues, a child with low normal intelligence, borderline intelligence, specific learning disorder. Now, this is something which is very commonly missed. I mean, if we are not careful enough to take a writing sample, make the child read something, ask the child simple calculations which should be commensurate to his age, we are very likely to miss this. So, in a clinical setting, even without a clinical psychologist, we should screen the child for SLDs, every single child who comes with academic decline. Then language disorders are something that are quite likely to be missed. For example, things like difficulties with the receptive language, difficulties with the expressive language. Now, these are certain things which do come in our repertoire, but we are not often adequately trained for it. So, there is a high chance that we could miss one or more of these. It's important to assess for common psychiatric causes. Now, this is something that most of us do very commonly. Assess for depression. Depression very understandably can give rise to academic decline. Anxiety disorders because of impaired concentration, which leads to impaired learning, performance, avoiding going to school, avoiding examinations, and so on. Substance use. Substances can have direct effect on cognition, like I mean, most of the substances that children can use, like weed or smoking or you name it. I mean, these days MD, MDMA, cannabis. I mean, they can cause difficulties with concentration, memory, other executive functions, or the effect could be indirect. For example, a person who is using substances could develop secondary psychological problems, difficulties with sleep, and so on, which can cause academic difficulties. Emerging psychotic disorders. Now, this again is fairly common, not at all rare. For example, especially in the prodrome of a psychotic illness. Now, sometimes the history that we get is that the child is showing academic decline completely unexplained. We are trying to intervene, we keep calling the child for weeks and months, and slowly later on psychotic symptoms start emerging. Like the family might start reporting that lately he's seen muttering to himself, or he sometimes smiles to himself, or he shows undue fearfulness, which is not really understandable. So that can be a reason. We should be on the lookout for this. Personality traits and coping styles that may influence academic functioning, like my own personality trait of shyness, diffidence, not being able to answer in the class. Now, thankfully, I got over it subsequently, but in the earlier years, I clearly remember that this would be a hindrance to my asking questions in the class, replying to answers to the teacher, the answers of which I knew. Evaluating sleep is extremely important, especially these days. One very common factor is inadequate sleep. One important fact that all of us need to know is that as puberty comes in, there is a phase delay in the sleep cycle. For example, before puberty, say till 10, 11, 12 years of age, the children's sleep cycle and an adult's are similar. I mean, the child and I both would start feeling sleepy by, for example, 10 p.m. and we would get up at a particular time, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., depending on the age. But puberty onwards, there's a phase delay. So the child is likely to sleep late and get up late. Now, this is a universal phenomenon, and these children, I mean, in spite of the best misdirected efforts by the parents, are unable to sleep at the parental desired time of say 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and the child can sleep only by say 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. and because of the system of school which is fairly early in most parts of the country, the child has got to get up early. So imagine a child who is sleeping only between say 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. till only 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. because he has got to get up for the school. Now is going to be sleep deprived, and this is going to affect the cognition, the emotional life, the behavior, and almost everything in a child's life. So it's important to assess the duration of the sleep. Is the child following the sleep hygiene? Does the child have a sleep disorder? Now, it's not a commonly known fact that some sleep disorders in adults, for example, obstructive sleep apnea, they are not at all unknown in children. In fact, some studies say that obstructive sleep apnea happens in up to 5% of children. And whereas in adults, it would reflect as depressive symptoms and cognitive difficulties in the daytime. In a child, the OSA is more likely to lead to symptoms of ADHD. So this is something that we should not miss. So history of snoring, suddenly gasping in the middle of the night and so on. I won't go into details of that, but we all know that. Excessive screen time. Again, now that is something that's found extremely common. A child sleeping with a mobile phone in the bed and browsing, looking at shorts and whatnot till late at night. That completely kind of destroys the sleep. It's important to assess for medical comorbidities. Does the child have any vision or hearing problems? Again, commonly missed. And a large number of medical illnesses. Now, an ongoing medical illness can interfere with the child's academics in multiple ways. For example, the symptoms of the illness themselves could be distressing, interfering with the studies, or the medication that the patient is getting could cause difficulties, or the child might be required to be hospitalized multiple times. I think all of us know of such unfortunate children who need frequent hospitalization because of some chronic relapsing illness, and now that naturally interferes with schooling. Family and environmental factors. Now, this is again something that is not very commonly evaluated, but is extremely important. Any kind of difficulties in the family, anything that causes interpersonal problems in the family, parental conflict among themselves, these can lead to much insecurity in the child and academic decline. Now, imagine a family where the parents frequently have fights. The child goes to school, he is not able to concentrate in school, all the time worrying that would the parents be fighting at home? Is the mother again being aggressivized against by the father? Financial stresses, unrealistic expectations by the parents. Now, while talking to the parents, it's very important to assess roughly the child's intellectual ability, and is the parental expectation commensurate with the child's abilities? Frequently, it is not. Assess parenting styles, communication patterns, and family supports. For example, if the child gets less marks, how do the parents respond? Are they harsh? Are they aggressive? Or they try to empathize with the child, they try to talk it out with the child, try to say as to where the problem lies, and so on. So, an overall history about how the family is functioning, how the parents are functioning between themselves, what's the kind of relationship, the communication patterns between the parents and the child, that's something extremely important. And of course, exploring about abuse, neglect, bullying in school, peer victimization. Now, all these can again lead to anxiety, insecurity, fearfulness in the school refusal, and so on. School and education system are again very important variables. Now, when we are assessing a child with academic difficulties, it's very important to, of course, take the history from the child and from the parents separately, and also from the teachers at times. The teacher's opinion on the child's behavior in the classroom. Sometimes the parents are not aware of that. If the parents are not too interested in the child's the school behavior and child's academic progress, then these are certain things that they may not be able to tell us really. Are the difficulties generalized or limited to specific subjects? Again, very important. History of frequent school changes. Like my father was in a central government service, and I had to change school 4 times. And I can tell you with certainty that it's not a very easy predicament to be in. Poor teaching methods, curriculum mismatch, absenteeism, unsupportive classroom environment, a student who is being ridiculed by the teacher repeatedly. I think we all have witnessed this from our school days. We do remember certain teachers who keep on intimidating, ridiculing specific students, and the students generally getting disinterested in studies, starts hating the teacher, starts hating the subject, and so on. Now, content of curriculum, that's again very important. What's the kind of thing that's being taught? Now, I for one have a huge problem with the kind of content we have. I always have a feeling that by 12th standard, the basics of all subjects should be taught, so that for subsequent studies in higher education, in the college education, the child can go further. But unfortunately, I mean, look at almost, any board, be it state board, central board, or some international board, the students have to carry a very heavy burden of books. The amount of syllabus they have got to cover is extremely large, sometimes ridiculous in its content. You just don't understand why the hell does a student studying in 4th standard or 5th standard have to read all these things that he is being taught. I'll just give you an example. Some days back, a mother brought her son to me. The son was in the 6th standard. I would not name the school. And she told me that, sir, look at this sentence. This sentence was dictated by the English teacher to my son. And he came home asking me the meaning of this, and I am not able to explain to him. Now read this for me. Rather, I'll read it. The future perfect continuous passive first person singular of the verb to teach is I shall have been being taught. Now, friends, I have read this multiple times. I have not been able to comprehend it. And I'm 100% certain that 99.99% children who are in 6th standard are not going to understand this. Now look at this second brilliant piece of curriculum. The same classroom, the same teacher. She taught students 10 different sorts of pronouns. And then she dictated this whole paragraph. Now I read this. Mood case. This means the mode in which the action is conceived of. By case of nouns or pronouns is meant the relation in which a noun or pronoun stands to verbs, nouns, pronouns and predispositions. Words which have a plural form not ending in s form the plural genitive by adding s, for example, mice, wolves. Now, it is either the teacher who needs to be given ECTs or the person who made this syllabus who needs to be given ECTs. I mean, how do you expect a child, leave apart 6th standard, a student of 12th standard is not going to understand what is being taught in the school. Now lately, COVID also created a lot of problems. In fact, there are many studies about pre-COVID and post-COVID performance of children, interest of children in academics and so on. And as you can see in this one particular study, now this is from USA, but I think it illustrates the point that pre-COVID, 58% children were doing well. I mean, as per the school records, and post-COVID, it was only 32%. So, I mean, the pandemic with all its associated learning difficulties, like the child not being able to go to the live classroom, little communication with the teacher, online classes which were rather poorly regulated, the teacher never knew whether the student is attentive or not, and so on. And we all have heard of these difficulties, sometimes seen them firsthand. Now, when we are assessing students, it's important to also look at the learning habits and the way the student studies. For example, what's the pattern of study? What's the time of the day when he studies? Does he do revisions? If he does revisions, what's the method of revision? Does he study continuously, or he follows something like Pomodoro technique? I suppose most of you know what that technique is. I personally find it impressive and perhaps very helpful. that the student is supposed to read for 20-25 minutes, take a 5 to 7 minute break, again read for 20-25 minutes, again take a 5-7 minutes break, and then go on. So does the child follow this kind of a pattern, or he tries to sit continuously, maybe under parental pressure, that 3 घंटे के पहले उठना नहीं, यहाँ से 3 घंटे कम से कम पढ़ना है. So I mean the studying style of a person. And as I mentioned here, many children require academic coaching rather than psychiatric consultation. I mean, they could be having difficulties pertaining to a particular subject. So a student who is poor in maths, I mean, he would require specific coaching in maths. A student who is not doing well in physics but doing well in all other subjects. So sometimes more than mental health, it's a question of being coached properly, and we should be in a position to assess as to who needs what. Now, I think some of you might be knowing this, that even gifted children with a very high IQ, sometimes they do poorly and get less marks. And a common reason is boredom with the studies. And the student is grasping things so fast in the class, or he is so much ahead of the class in his reading, that he finds the whole thing boring, loses interest in that. And by virtue of loss of interest in that, he nosedives. I mean, starts studying less and starts getting less marks. Or he might upset the teacher by his lack of attention in the class, a kind of, an attitude that could seem arrogant or whatever, and then the student not doing well. So we need to remember that a high IQ does not really preclude academic decline. It's important to assess the motivation, especially with regard to older children. I mean, are they really motivated in studying what they are studying? Have they taken up a course out of their own interest, or was it the family that forced a child to take up a particular course? I remember one patient, I mean, a very illustrative case. Now, I was seeing this girl who was, I think, around 20-21 years of age, and she was failing. She went into a medical college. She was not at all interested in going for medicine, but her father forced her into medicine. And she kept on failing repeatedly in first MBBS. Now, when I talked to her alone, after 2 or 3 sessions, 2 or 3 follow-ups, she told me that, sir, I have decided to go on failing till he takes me out of the medical college and puts me in the college that, in a stream that I like. She liked some other stream. I mean, so look at this thing, how frightening that can be. She has decided to fail. A bright student who had been a topper in her class now decides कि इनको मैं दिखा दूंगी, अब मैं पास नहीं होती यहाँ पे. Now, what can the parent do if a child decides like that? So, is there a mismatch between what the child is studying and what he or she would like to study? That also needs to be evaluated. Now, my experience and my colleagues' experience, I mean, it tells us that there are several causes of academic difficulties which are very commonly missed. I have listed a few here. Sensory problems. I mean, we often don't ask history about the quality of vision of the child. Is the child's hearing normal? These are kind of things that are taken for granted. And unless we question, the parents may not really come out कि नहीं डॉक्टर साहब थोड़ा कभी-कभी लगता है वो क्लास वर्क लिखता ही नहीं है, पता नहीं उसको बोर्ड दिखता है कि नहीं. Those kind of things do happen. We know that. Failure. I had read an interesting statement somewhere that failure is a common cause of failure. So if a child gets poor marks or fails because of some reason which is not connected to his ability, for example, an illness in the family, an illness in the child. Now, one failure, it creates emotional difficulties for the child. The child's self-confidence plummets down, and that can lead to a cascade, ultimately leading to maybe more failures. So one needs to see as to what was the reason for the initial failure, and was there something beyond the child's control. Then medication. We always have to take history of medication. Most of us do, but sometimes it is missed. For example, is the child on anticonvulsants? Is the child on antihistaminics? Is the child on opioids for some painful conditions? Is the child on any continuous psychotropic medication for a long time, which itself could be a reason for cognitive difficulties? Then parental attitude towards education and school. Sometimes the parental attitude, a negative attitude, can rub off on children. For example, parents who themselves are not very highly educated parents could parents who don't hold education system or the school in high regard, they could pass disparaging remarks, disparaging comments about the school, and this rubs off on the child. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ए पेरेंट हु रिपीटेडली से इसकी पढ़ के भी क्या होने वाला है, ये आजकल के स्कूल भी ऐसे कहाँ पढ़ाते हैं अच्छे से, हम इतना ही पढ़े हैं तो उससे हमने बहुत बहुत कुछ कर लिया ज़िंदगी में. Now these are the kind of things if spoken in front of children, I mean we can understand the child's attitude towards education is going to go down. Then parental behavior. Now again this is something that we might miss. So when we talk to the child privately, we have to ask the child about the kind of parent-child interaction, how the parents behave amongst themselves and so on. Something that could be missed. And of course the teacher's undesirable behaviors in the classroom. Is it something in the school that has upset the child, any particular subject that has upset the child? It has to be understood that sometimes a negative attitude towards one particular teacher or one particular subject can get generalized to education on the whole. So child who has been performing very poorly, for example in mathematics, might start hating not only mathematics, but that might also get kind of osmosis might happen to other subjects. While taking history, it's always advisable to have a kind of checklist. See, because especially in stand-alone clinics where there is a single psychiatrist and no other help, and we are taking the history, it's quite likely that we might miss many things. Like so far I have enumerated many factors that can lead to academic decline. So unless we follow a checklist pattern, I mean we literally have to go on ticking. Like for example, we could use something like a Neimhart's pro forma for child psychiatry. Now this is only the first page, but subsequent pages they have given a list of various kinds of symptoms of various disorders in a kind of checklist form. Or this pediatric symptom checklist, it's all about the mental health of the child and covers most of the mental health issues in children. So it's not only in institutions but even in private psychiatry that we should be using this kind of checklist. Now when we are planning the treatment after all evaluation, we have to think in biopsychosocial terms. So biological terms, does the child have any physical problems, any illnesses, any medication? Psychological factors, the child's temperament, study style, the reaction to school, peer group and so on. And of course social, the family, the teachers, the overall school environment. So I mean it's only after getting a comprehensive view of the entire thing can we really formulate as to what are the different factors which could be leading to the problem. And it's again important to avoid reductionistic explanations. Like for example, saying that I mean he was scolded by the teacher and therefore he's not doing well academically. Now this could be too simple. Maybe you need to prove more. Or you're saying that I mean there was a school change and then because of the school change this thing has happened. It's important not to jump to conclusions, and very important that we take a very comprehensive history, biological, psychological and social factors, and develop a formulation that can guide targeted intervention. So after assessing all the relevant factors, we need to make a formulation which will guide us to treatment. So these are the factors, for example, in his physical aspect, in his temperament and the family environment, which need to be tackled. So the treatment plan would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. It's important to know that very commonly, rather more often than not, a collaborative approach is something that's going to help. A child with academic decline, now in a rushed OPD, when many of us cannot give more than 15 to 20 minutes for a new client, I mean it's extremely difficult to really go into all the relevant details. And now in institutions things are easier, I mean because they could be having an occupational therapist, they could be having a remedial trainer, they could be having psychologists, but in many of the private clinics these kind of facilities are not available. And I mean, though not, if not under one roof, we need to take every care that the child sees any relevant specialist that we think can help in the overall management of the child. Now, this is the specialties I've mentioned here are the kind of specialties that can all be helpful in a child with academic decline. So, a psychiatrist, a pediatrician, psychologist, special educator for SLDs, speech and language pathologist for communication disorders, other speech-related difficulties, occupational therapist, for example, child with ADHD, child with autism, ophthalmologist, and the school, the teachers. The teachers also very often need to be incorporated into the total plan of managing such a child. So, collaborative approach is the key, and wherever possible, that's the best approach. Now, these are the specialties that often work together. I mean, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, special educator. I mean, many of us know of remedial trainers, people who have done their special education courses and help us, and the school, of course. Now, these are the ones that commonly come into play, but then we need to remember that beyond these, there are other 4 or 5 specialties that can also help. It's important to establish realistic goals and monitor the progress. A realistic goal is very important. For example, a child who is failing or a child who is getting very poor grades, I mean, you cannot expect the child to suddenly jump up and start doing very well. But step by step, I mean, try to see as to how improvement can be made in bits and pieces and slowly reaching towards a higher aim. Now, this is important that the goal is not merely symptom reduction, but recovery of academic functioning, self-esteem, and the developmental trajectory. So, when the parents get a child with academic decline to you, the parents are also getting a child who is not only doing poorly academically, but a child who has lost the self-esteem, a child who has developed disinterest in meeting his peers, a child who has fallen in the eyes of the family and the other relatives. So, I mean, our job is not only to see that the child is helped academically in whatever way possible, but trying to help the child in all the various dimensions of mental health, taking the child towards an upward trajectory of mental health. And the outcome needs to be monitored through the attendance. Has the school attendance improved? Have the grades improved? And has the overall well-being improved? Is the child better placed emotionally? Is the family environment now a better place to live? And so on. Now, this list is interesting. I mean, this is a list of very eminent people and the remarks that their teachers had made about them. Now, I'm not saying this to say that, I mean, it's quite okay to get low marks in school. But, I mean, the parents need to be told that if the child is not doing well academically, not all is lost. See, because there are children who unfortunately can not do well academically, perhaps ever. A child with, say, a low normal IQ, a child with a borderline intelligence, a child with a very severe SLD, which was not treated in time, a child with autistic features, whom you can't make study adequately. So the parents need to be told that all is not lost and have hope, and it's ultimately how you deal with the child that makes a difference. I mean, just for your interest, you can read through this. And Beethoven was described by his teacher as hopeless as a composer. James Watt, the man who discovered the power of steam and the steam engine, dull and inept. Charles Darwin. Now look at this. Just the non-intellectual, aimless, conforming, inhibited young man whom we would now view as a disastrous prospect for research. And that sounds ridiculous because the research that Darwin did on the Galapagos Island, I mean, that's one of the most remarkable research in the history of science. You will be a disgrace to yourself and the family. Now, this is a man we worship after 175 years after he gave his theory of evolution. Edison, at the bottom of his class, stupid. Einstein, mentally slow and adrift forever in his foolish dreams. Perhaps the greatest scientist of the last century. Sir Ronald Ross, a pure pupil. So, I mean, there's a lesson for the parents here that not all is lost. I mean, they need to have heart. I mean, even though the child may not be able to do well academically, maybe even subsequently, I mean, things can change. and the future would not be as bleak as they're imagining. So, the key takeaways: academic decline is often an early warning sign of psychological, developmental, medical, or environmental distress. The psychiatrist's role is to move beyond grades, identify underlying causes through a comprehensive biopsychosocial assessment. That's a very important point. And facilitate recovery through coordinated multidisciplinary intervention. So the bottom line is that basically it takes much time to be given to the child. I mean, it can't be 15-minute thing. If not possible in one session, the parents and the child could be called over several sessions. But it would take nothing less than, in my opinion, 1 hour to really assess the child holistically. I mean, screen the child in a kind of holistic fashion, and then decide whether the child needs this or that, whether does he need assessment for SLT or maybe sensory features of the child like hearing or vision or whatever. So thank you so much. So as I said earlier, that was a bird's eye view of the entire topic, and thanks for being here. Thank you.
So thank you very much for extensively dealing with not only the school refusal, but the scholastic performances or the poor scholastic performances in any school at the different age range. So with this short description, and would like to, if there are any question, we can discuss on that aspect.
Yeah. I mean, if there are any comments, any experiences that someone would want to share.
You can check any questions are there on the chat box.
Sir, I'm not seeing any in the chat box.
Achha. That means the things are very clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
There is only one compliment that which I am grateful for.
Thank you.
Right.
So this was a really nice elaboration on the poor scholastic performance, from starting from the low intelligence function to autism to the environmental factors and to the factors in the family. All has been dealt upon elaborately. So I don't think that there might be much of confusion or clarification on this subject. If there are any, you can take on, or you can say bye bye and good night.
I think we could say bye bye or good night because things seem to be fairly clear.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a really nice of you.
Right.
And I must congratulate the whole team of the child psychiatry team of the IPS Association for nicely organizing such an important issues which has been dealt upon extensively by Professor Bhave sir. And they are doing it. The child psychiatry section of the IPS Association are doing the regular programs. And this is one of the subcommittee which are regularly doing some or other programming every month. Thank you very much, all the
Thank
subcommittee
you, sir.
members.
On
Thank you.
behalf of the Child Psychiatry
Thank you very
Subcommittee,
much.
big thank you to Mishra sir for chairing this session. And a very big thank you to Bhave sir for the wonderful presentation tonight. I'm sure everybody in the audience has benefited clinically from hearing you talk tonight, sir. I think we'll be better practitioners owing to this talk from tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you,
ma'am.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you, all the audience,
Thank
for
you.
the nice participation.
Bye bye to all.